Hi guys, James here. Thank you for coming to watch. And today is a video all about how this guitar has changed my life. And not just this guitar, this rig that I've put together for this week's Finding My Tone. It honestly gives me the goosebumps. Now that's not necessarily to do with my playing. It's more just about the sound that comes out of this instrument, that amp, and the way I've set it up. So I wanted to talk about that this week. This is a baritone guitar, which is why it looks pretty large. It's got a longer scale length than a normal guitar, so it becomes a baritone. It's tuned down basically to B, so you've got 4 whole tones down. You can hear that. It's very low. So what we've got here is standard B tuning, so it is a B major when you play the E major shape. Which might sound a little bit odd. It sort of takes a minute for your ears to get used to it. And also just because the different frequencies there sort of play against each other differently than when it's tuned on a normal guitar. So just if you don't know, we have a low B, then we have an E, an A, a D, an F sharp, and a B. But you can even tune this down another whole step to A. And that's because we've got a longer scale length. It's probably around 27 or 28 inches as opposed to the roughly 25 inches of a normal guitar. But then we use really thick gauge strings. So we've got 13s, 14s, 15s. I think these are probably 14s, and they've got it's a wound 3rd string where the D is on here. So you can't bend it particularly. It doesn't sound good if you bend it. But that's what this is. This is a Rivolta Mondata made by Novo. It's a very nice baritone guitar. It's quite an interesting one. It's got a P90 in the neck position and a humbucker here in the bridge, and then you can put them out of phase or you can split them, as in coil tap them. I don't do either. I don't think it sounds particularly great, so I just use the volume control. I don't even use the tone on here. I don't really need to make the tone to sort of muffle that sound. It's already very low, but it's a great volume control. You can really swell. You the ability to sort of do swell effects on here, which I think works really well actually. But what is it about the baritone that has got me so excited? Well, if you watched last week's video, it was Finding My Tone about ambient guitar, and I had this setup on my classic reverb signature instead of this Bloomfield drive. We'll get to that in a minute. And I was using 4 pedals that came together to create a really beautiful ambient tone, and that was the Ryra clone, so that really gave that little hint of overdrive, but just really boosted everything. Then you had the Strymon Volante to give really beautiful tape delay that just made everything feel airy and more ambient. Then we had the Fender Tube Tremolo, which is a great effect. It's a perfect tube tremolo, just like in the amps, the Fender amps. And then we had the Cali 76 compressor by Origin Effects that just sort of took off the edges and made it feel more ambient, because really the aim with ambient music is for it to be sort of beautifully harmonic but just relaxing as well, so that you feel the music go through you, and that's how I think about it. And with a compressor on, that really helps. So what is it about this guitar and this rig, which is much more simple than last week's, that gets to me? Well, it's basically the ability to use this instrument sort of like its own dirge, if that makes sense. You can keep that bottom note going. Now, obviously you can do that on a normal guitar, but to me, although it does sound good on a normal guitar, it doesn't quite have the effect that I'm going for with this. The fact that it's tuned in standard tuning is great, so I haven't had to learn too much, but you've got to just be careful that it doesn't get too muddy. If you were to play an E minor shape, it can get very muddy. But you sort of work your way around it. The E7 that I'm playing, so on here an E major actually looks like an A major, but an E7. D, which looks like a G. So it just has this really harmonic full feeling with the low frequencies that you can add in. So it's halfway to a bass guitar, and you can sort of play around. It can get away from you sometimes, and you let the strings carry on going and going, and you sort of have to be careful and gently sort of touch one to slow it down to reduce the volume. But altogether, it's a complete instrument for ambient guitar. You can really get the feeling of an expansive range of frequency. So it's great. And when I say that having a baritone guitar has changed my life, I really mean it. I've only had this a week. I'd never played one before, but it just somehow I'd sort of felt the urge to get those lower tones. And I was thinking about this because when I go back to playing the normal guitar from this, it does have there's quite a big difference. And you sort of feel the lack of that frequency, the low frequencies, and the way you can play around with that. And I thought I'd get past that by setting up one of my guitars a bit like Joey Landreth does. So much lower tuning, maybe C instead of B, so one higher, but with 13 gauge strings. So I think I might take my Epiphone Les Paul Gold Top and try that out. That's my experimental guitar, which I've currently got Gibson custom buckers in. So it sounds really good. And I could just use that to try getting some of these baritone feelings, because you just get that, almost you get that Joey Landreth feeling. You know, it just has authority to the sound. And with this amp, well, let's get to that in a second, it just sounds great. Okay, so what's the next part? Because really this 3-part rig plus the pedals you don't have to use. This 3-part rig is what's making this work, and part 2 is this box. This is the Iron Man 2 attenuator, and it's going to become the most important part of my rig overall, I think, because whichever amp I'm using, whichever guitar I'm using, I will use this Iron Man 2. So Iron Man 2 is made by Tone King. Tone King make fantastic boutique amps, of which I own one, the Sky King, which has inbuilt Iron Man 2 attenuators. Now, this thing is able to reduce the volume of the guitar, but in a way that's much better than any other attenuator I've tried. Now, I tried a few in the shops, and I bought an aux box by Universal Audio, mainly not for its attenuation, but rather for its sort of cab simulation stuff, and it's clever, and it can do other things. But it's got a basic attenuator on it just with 5 steps, of which the first step doesn't really do anything, and by the time you would get to like the 3rd step down, it's too quiet, and it's got only 5 steps, so really 2 or 3 of them are usable, maybe. This one has about 24 steps, if not more. So you can go from 0 decibels off through 4, 7, 10, then you've got 8, 12, 22, 32, 25. I mean, lots of different numbers, going down to 38. So we're on minus 10. And if I was to go to just minus 7, and then minus 11, minus 14, let's go down to minus 18, anyway, I shall do a full review about this box soon. But what has it allowed me to do? Well, really, coupled with this fantastic amp, the 2-Rock Bloomfield Drive, it's allowing me to use a 100-watt amplifier in my house, in this room that is next to our kitchen where my wife is working, and it's not blowing her head off or mine. I set this in the 100 watt mode instead of the 50 because I like the headroom. And normally I have to have the master control down at about 8 o'clock, and that's just on. I mean, really, it's barely on. Well, today I've been able to have the master on at 10 o'clock. I could go higher and set the attenuator lower, but I don't want it to break up. And that feeling of the tubes actually coming on and warming up really warms up the tone, I find. It gives me that. Now, I might be talking rubbish, mightn't I? So what if we go back to what I normally play it on and then just turn off the attenuator, which I think I have to do by pressing this. So now we're on 0 attenuation. So you can see the master volume can get this very low. It's not because I can't play the amp quietly enough, but normally let's say I'd go up to maybe here. Now, I've got to say with this amp, it's an incredible master volume, and I'm happy enough without the attenuator, but I've got to use this attenuator for all my other amps anyway. But if I was to go up to here, where I've just been playing with it all day, well, it's going to be very loud. It's just too loud for me to be comfortable. Pulling it back to -10, suddenly get the feeling that the amp is actually working, it's open, it's got a full rounded sound, lots of sustain, but you just pulled the volume back a tiny bit. Now, I'm using it today with it's set in bypass, so I'm bypassing the tone stack, but I've got the mid and the deep boost in. Now, you'll see the difference. This is with it on bypass. And then with the bypass not on, it's... Which sounds lovely, but with it bypass, you just get a bit of extra oomph. And I think I preferred that to just turning up the gain today, and that's something I've discovered about this amp that I really like. And then, of course, you've got that reverb. Absolutely glorious. The best reverb I've heard. It smothers you, it wraps you in reverb. I mean, I'm being really over the top today. It's just the way it's making me feel. This whole rig altogether gives me really warm feelings. And it makes me want to create music. And if that's not what you're looking for, then what are you looking for? So, what if I turn on the tremolo? You know I love tremolo if you've been on this channel. Excuse me. That sounds glorious with the tremolo, but it can just overwhelm this whole thing with that amount of reverb. So I was only using it sparingly as I was recording. I'm not even sure if we'll make it into the intro, but when I do record this piece, I will have a little bit of tremolo in there. And then we've got the Cali 76. So without it... It just gives it the feeling of being a professional sound, if that makes sense. It just reins in the slightest bits of the edge, and it gives it a nice feeling, bit of compression. It makes it all sound even a bit better, but I don't always use it. It can take away some of the dynamic feeling, which when you're playing like this, you really want that. Which with it on, I promise you I was trying to play the same way, but with the compressor on, the notes blossom by themselves, if that makes sense. So it can be harder to keep control of exactly what you're doing, which when you're wanting to play sort of... you're wanting to create a sort of layered, textured piece with various sort of bits to it, which is what I'm trying to do, then you just need to be in control of all the dynamics. So the compressor could come into play at various points, but overall, sometimes the tremolo and the compressor together sound brilliant. I feel like if I was playing live, they would come on as the piece progressed to make the piece blossom. And then sort of in the middle, you would crescendo the piece and you'd bring it back down, you'd turn them off and you'd bring it back down gently. And this feels like a live rig to me. The Iron Man, you would use it or not use it depending on the venue. But it's brilliant for recording, brilliant for being at home, brilliant for getting the most of your amp. I mean, even a large venue is going to struggle with a loud 100-watt amp. So you might want to tone that down. And then this guitar, it's my first baritone guitar. I got it because it sort of reminds me of a reverse Firebird, I guess. Not the headstock, but I love the look of it. You can get it in Sunburst. I just saw it being played on the internet, went online, bought one. It was a bit more expensive than I probably was thinking of spending on a baritone when I first thought of it. But it works well. It stays in tune well. The pickups sound decent, especially when just used in their normal mode instead of like playing around with these toggle switches down here. But overall, this rig has absolutely blown my mind. For me personally, it gives me the goosebumps. It makes me feel like I want to create music, and that's what I'm here for. So let me know what you think. Have you played a baritone? Did it work for you? Do you think this rig sounds good? What else could I add to make it more interesting or to give it another texture? Yeah, let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed it. I will get back to the finding my tone for the more bluesy stuff soon. I love that stuff, but you know, when you're going with the flow and this is what you're enjoying at the moment, you just sort of got to go with it. And this last couple of weeks, it's the ambient, playing the ambient stuff that's making me happy. So anyway, if you've enjoyed that and you want to see more about this and more about the other music that I play and the other instruments and everything in the next Finding My Tone, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to enter my competition. You have to subscribe to the channel and make a comment, and that is if you want to win the Nobles ODR1 pedal. Go back a few videos and watch that one next if you haven't seen it. I'll send it anywhere in the world when I get to 1,500 subs. So that won't be too long, hopefully. If we can get there before Christmas, that would be cool, but I think it's going to be January or February. Anyway, I'm really enjoying this. I hope you did too. See you next time.